Welcome into South Courtside. My name is Zach, and today for you I have a full 2-round mock draft. Now, the NFL draft is just 2 days away. It's on Thursday. Could not be more excited. But, like I said, for you, I have a 2-round mock draft. Today we will go over the first round, and then probably on Thursday morning I will post the full second round. So be on the lookout for that. But the first pick, the Raiders, obviously, it's going to be Fernando Mendoza. Not much debate about that. For this mock draft, I'm probably not going to go super in depth, for time's sake on players that I spent a lot of time on in the last video. So yeah, like Fernando Mendoza, obvious pick here. Second, it's going to be David Bailey for me again. The top of my mock hasn't really changed much from the one, say, about 2 weeks ago. So I still have David Bailey at 2 and Arvell Reese at 3. Bailey probably has the higher floor. Reese probably has the higher ceiling, a bit more of a project. Not a lot of edge rushing experience. Only played like edge rusher for a couple games for Ohio State. And even that, use that term loosely, edge rusher. He was really an off ball linebacker his whole career. But projects, if you're taking Arvell Reese in the top 3, you're taking him to be an edge rusher. You're not taking an off ball linebacker that high. And if you were, you'd be taking Sonny Styles. But I digress. Moving on to number 4 is the Titans. Here, I still have Jeremiah Love. I think he's just what they need right now. Complement Cam Ward, get the offense some more weapons, and continue to build around that young core of Cam Ward and Wan'Dale Robinson and whatnot. So moving on to the Giants at 5th. This is where I have my first change from my last mock draft. I had them taking Carnell Tate last time. I thought they needed, another pass catcher with the exit of Wan'Dale Robinson, who I just mentioned. But I ended up still going with Sonny Styles here. I really think that they need to beef up that defense. They just traded away Dexter Lawrence on Saturday, I believe it was, to the Bengals for the 10th pick. So they have 2 picks here in the top 10, which is, a big development from my last video. But yeah, I think Sonny Styles is the fit here. Great off-ball linebacker, can run side to sideline. Leader, outstanding, character guy. And I think he will be and can be that green dot in the middle of the field, the leader of that defense. So moving on, now we have the Browns at 6. This is the first of 2 picks in the first round. They obviously have pick 24. That's the trade they got. That's the pick they got from the trade with the Jaguars for Travis Hunter last draft. But I still have the Browns taking Francis Mauigoa. I just think that this offensive line is too weak and too thin right now that I can't really picture them going any other direction. The only other player I considered here was Carnell Tate, or maybe even trading back. I saw Mel Kiper's mock draft. He had the Cowboys trading up to 6 with the Browns, and the Browns took Caden Proctor down at 12. I didn't project any trades in this first 2 rounds. I didn't really. I feel like that just makes things weird and messes things up. So I didn't project any trades. But if I would have, I probably would have projected the Cowboys trading up, much like Kiper did, or the Chiefs trading up, honestly, to like 3 or 4 maybe, and getting Arvell Reese. But no trades in this mock. Keep it simple. So yeah, I have Mauigoa at 6 to the Browns. Now moving on to the Commanders. This is the first pick where there were kind of like a multitude of options. They could go Ruben Bain, Caleb Downs, Carnell Tate. But I ended up going with Carnell Tate. I think they need pass catchers. You're going to build around Jayden Daniels, and Jayden Daniels is going to be the cornerstone of your franchise. And I think you need to get in weapons. They obviously have Terry McLaurin. Great player, very consistent. Has had some trouble staying on the field these last couple of years. So is Jayden Daniels. He had his fair share of injuries last year. Only played, 7, 8 games at the most. But I just think they need to build around him. Defense is a need, and I think they will come back around and pick some defense, later in the second round. What pick do they have? They don't have a second round pick. Okay. Regardless, I think they'll focus on defense more later in the draft. So I think Carnell Tate is the pick here at 7. I did debate taking Jordan Tyson here at 7. I have really liked what I've seen from Jordan Tyson lately. Obviously, his one big major red flag was the injuries, the collarbone, the ACL, and then his hamstrings last year. I'm not awfully worried about that. Like, obviously, it is a big concern, and teams will have absolutely look at that and view that as an issue probably. But I don't think quite as much as some people are making it out to be. And I've seen him falling to the 20s, like the Eagles at 23, and I honestly just can't envision that happening. I think his floor is like the Jets at 16. But yeah, I went with Carnell Tate at 7. We'll get into where Tyson lands very soon. So at 8 is the Saints. I had them taking Tyson in my last mock draft. However, I think if Ruben Bain is there at 8, I have a hard time seeing them pass on him. Saints need edge rushers. Who knows how long Cam Jordan has left? This could be his last year, 2 years maybe. Ruben Bain is a great edge rusher. Obviously, people talk a lot about his arm length, and he can't really extend on offensive tackles as you would like. Obviously, didn't hurt him at Miami. He had no issues doing that in college. I don't think that's something that is a big thing for me. I do value arm length. Later in this draft, you will see Cassius Howell fall a bit further than some people have him, and that's almost solely because of his arm length. His arms are much shorter than Ruben Bain's even, and I mean Bain had much more college production than Cassius Howell did. He was much better. That playoff run was one of the better playoff runs I've seen from an edge rusher in recent memory. So moving on, now we have the Chiefs at 9. Who really would have saw this coming? Before the season, the Chiefs picking the top 10, they probably aren't going to have this option very often, this opportunity very often, with as long as Patrick Mahomes is there. But they do this year. Obviously, the injuries. Patrick Mahomes towards ACL towards the end of last season. Chiefs do still hope he'll be back at the start of the season, even if he isn't. Pretty early into that season, I would say no later than the last week of September. And I think they need to get him a weapon. Travis Kelce signed a 3-year deal. I would be very surprised if he plays that deal out. I think, realistically, this is his last year. Honestly, I think last year should have been his last year. But he's coming back this year. And, I thought about Kenyon Sadiq here. Could be the guy, 6'3", 245. Great receiving threat. The best receiving threat tight end in this draft class by far, honestly. The best tight end overall in this class by far as well. Eli Stowers is the clear 2, but I'll talk more about him later in the second round. But yeah, he has some things that he needs to clean up before he's, in any Kenyon Sadiq conversations. But I went with the aforementioned Jordan Tyson. I think getting Patrick Mahomes, Jordan Tyson, is exactly what the Chiefs need right now. Tyson has the ability to be that number 1 alpha dog wide receiver that can lead the room and lead the team for years and years to come. As long as he can stay healthy, I think he has all the ability in the world. He has the chance and honestly the likelihood to become the best receiver in this class if he stays fully healthy. Carnell Tate, to me, is more of a surefire guy, a bit of a safer pick. But Tyson, if he can stay on the field, he's the most talented receiver in this class. So yeah, I think the Chiefs could get him at 9. This would be a fantastic pick and would make Patrick Mahomes very happy, as that receiver room has been a little thin for a couple of years now, ever since Tyreek Hill left. Obviously, Rashee Rice looks very promising. He has his own set of off-the-field issues that he needs to get cleaned up. But Jordan Tyson, to me, would be a great pick at number 9. At 10, the Giants, back on the clock. They took Sonny Styles at 5. They could go defense again. and just really bolster up that defense. They could look to get Jackson Dart a weapon. Makai Lemon is still on the board. Kenyon Sadiq is still on the board. Don't know if tight end is the biggest need for them right now. I ended up going with Caleb Downs. I love the fit here with Caleb Downs and that John Harbaugh defense. John Harbaugh loves to have an elite safety. I mean, who doesn't love to have an elite safety? But John Harbaugh especially, we saw what he did with Kyle Hamilton back in Baltimore. Caleb Downs, to me, has the ability to do that same thing. People will harp on his athleticism. He's not the biggest guy. He's not the fastest guy. But, however, he is the smartest guy. He knows exactly what's coming. He has great football IQ. He can read the offense like no other. Super, super smart guy. He can play anywhere. He can play in the box. He can play a deep third. He can play in the nickel if if it really came down to it and they were that thin at that nickel position, they could even stick Caleb there. I just think this is the perfect guy. Pair him with his college teammate Sonny Styles. That fit with John Harbaugh in that defense. I think this is a match made in heaven. I wouldn't be shocked if they picked him first at 5th. Maybe the Titans take Sonny Styles at 4, and it's between Caleb Downs and Jeremiah Love at 5. I would not be shocked at all if Downs was the pick at 5th, and they took, a wide receiver at 10th or whatever. But yeah, Caleb Downs, great fit there. We went to number 11, the Dolphins. I would have Makai Lemon again. I mean, not much to be said here. The Dolphins have by far the worst receiver room in the league, not even close. I mean, their wide receiver 1 right now is Tutu Atwell with Malik Washington. They desperately need all the help they can get at wide receiver. So Makai Lemon, to me, is the guy there. Number 12, the Cowboys. Went with Mansour Delane again. We're going to have a bit of a run here of, same picks. Delane, again, Cowboys, dreadful defense last year. Secondary especially. That pass defense was really bad. Mansour Delane, to me, is the clear corner 1. Jermon McCoy, pretty similar to Jordan Tyson. Maybe might be the most talented player at his position, but the injuries, are enough to pull him back, and probably won't be the first off the board at the position due to those lingering knee injuries or just injuries in general. The Rams at 13, I went with Freeling again. I really like the thought of him being able to sit and develop, huge player, 6'7", 315, absolutely huge. The ideal build for your franchise left tackle. Let him sit for a year, a couple weeks. Even if he does come in and start day 1, I don't think that'd be bad. I think he would benefit from sitting a little bit, but he doesn't have to by any means. You just love to see him bulk up a little bit. Like I said, 315, not the heaviest player, very tall. The Caden Proctor is the guy, absolutely huge. He's 6'7", about 350. Yeah, they actually have him as 366 on here. That is crazy. You'd love to see Freeling get up to that 330, 340 range. Doesn't have to get all the way up to 360 like Caden Proctor does. But to see him bulk up a little bit, at least, 10, 15 pounds, would be great to see from him. Now at 14, we have the Ravens. That interior was awful last year. I had them taking Vega Ioane, the guard from Penn State, in my last mock draft, but I've actually changed here. I still have them going interior, but I have them taking Spencer Fano. I don't think Fano is really going to be a tackle in the NFL. The really, really short arms. A lot of teams want him guard, even center. I've seen teams say, or heard of teams wanting to put him at center, and I don't think that'd be the worst thing ever. Obviously, that interior was very, very bad last year. Daniel Falele was a complete disaster to the point where it started to affect the center and the tackle. It was just a complete mess. And then the center, Tyler Linderbaum, ends up leaving in free agency, going to the Raiders. And so the Ravens need interior line. I think that's going to be what the pick is going to be here, regardless whether it is Vega Ioane or Spencer Fano. Ioane, you've seen him play guard. He's played guard his whole career, basically. Fano has played tackle his whole career, so you're kind of projecting a little bit here. But I went with Fano at 14. The Bucks at 15. I went with Sadiq again. They need receivers. They need receiving threats. Cade Otton is a great tight end, but I think he's better suited as a tight end too. He doesn't have to be that first option at that position. Mike Evans is gone. Chris Godwin, coming off that major ankle injury. Who knows what he's really going to be long term. And so, they're obviously trying to build around Emeka Egbuka in that receiving room, that he's the focal point. Had a great start to his rookie year last year. They didn't really have the production that you saw in the first half. In the second half, the team as a whole, just completely, the wheels fell off, from week 6 on. Baker Mayfield wasn't playing his best. Emeka wasn't playing his best. Nobody was playing their best. So I think Kenyon Sadiq, great receiving option. Underrated blocker. Definitely a much better blocker than Eli Stowers, the tight end 2 in this class. So Sadiq, pretty safe option here for me at 15. At 16, I had Jermod McCoy, the corner. Had him here again. Had him here a couple weeks ago in my last mock. The injury, didn't play at all last season. Everybody knows that. That's been beaten to death over these last 3-4 months in this pre-draft process. I'm not terribly worried about it. I think it is concerning that he didn't play at all last season and didn't work out at the combine. He did work out at his pro day, ran in the 4.4s for his 40. His speed, he didn't lose any speed. My concern more would be the lateral movements, and I would like to see him do more football-related drills and football-related workouts, which, it would be nice to see, but I don't think it's entirely necessary. And teams have seen him do that. Obviously, the public hasn't, but teams have. And so I feel pretty confident with Jermod McCoy here being that Sauce Gardner replacement. That secondary was awful last year. Didn't have a single interception all season. First time in NFL history that's ever happened. So yeah, Jermod McCoy at 16. Moving on to the Lions at 17 here. This could be a reach, but the Lions need linebacker here, and I love CJ Allen. CJ Allen has a pretty wide range for me. I think this is his ceiling here at 17. He could fall even to the early first round, the Jets or the Cardinals here at 33 or 34. But I have him going here at 17 to the Lions. He's not the biggest guy in the world. Not nearly as big as Sonny Styles, the clear number 1 linebacker in this class. Allen, only 6'1". Styles is about 6'4", 6'5". Let's see, what do they have him listed as? Yeah, 6'5", 243. So much bigger than CJ Allen. And, he's the number 1 linebacker for a reason. Nobody's suggesting that CJ Allen is better than Sonny Styles. But I do think CJ Allen is a great player, and I do think he is worthy of a first-round pick. This is drafting a bit off need here more than value. I do think CJ Allen is likely to fall a bit further than this. I do think he will go in the first round. I don't think he'll fall all the way to the Jets or Cardinals here at 33 or 34. So I have him here at 17. Now the Vikings at 18. I went with Dylan Thieneman again here. I had somebody in my comments last week, and I do very deeply appreciate you, say that they would prefer to see a interior defensive lineman here, and I honestly would agree. I think if there was a interior defensive lineman worth taking up here at 18, I would take them. But to me, just all the interior defensive linemen in this class, at least at the top, have too many concerns or inconsistencies in their game to take all the way up at 18 for me. Caden McDonald, I love Caden McDonald. He is my number 1 interior defensive lineman in this class. But he's a little small. 6'3", I don't know how accurate that is. I think he's a bit closer to that 6'1", 6'2" range. that's the main concern with Cam McDonald is his size. He had some concerns about that coming out of high school as a recruit, and now they're kind of resurfacing as a draft prospect. Caleb Banks, if it wasn't for the foot injury, probably would be the number one interior defensive lineman in this class, but he's dealt with multiple foot injuries now, which is a big concern with those bigger guys. And then Peter Woods and Christian Miller, I think, are also great, and I would not be shocked if they went in the first round. Spoiler, I actually have Peter Woods in the first round later. But like Christian Miller, I would not be shocked at all if he found his way into the late first round. But to me, none of these guys, I can't justify taking any of these four guys up here at 18. And so I think Thieneman, they have a big hole at safety and interior defensive line. But I didn't see the value taking a interior defensive lineman at 18. So I went with Thieneman there. At 19, the Panthers, I went with another safety who I think is actually much closer to Thieneman than a lot of people think. I went with Emmanuel McNeil-Warren. I had him at 22, I believe, to the Chargers in my last mock. He's climbing a bit still for me. I love his size, but I think you'd like to see him dominate a little bit more. And playing in the MAC, very inferior competition. You'd like to see him kind of take over games a little bit more. Didn't really happen that often. But I love his size. I really like him as a player. I think he's a smart safety, really lengthy. I think he'll succeed. That might not be the biggest need for the Panthers. They just drafted Lathan Ransom last year, and he came in and was a day one starter and was really solid for them. He had his moments, don't get me wrong, but overall he's really solid. But I think they could benefit from another safety back there, and I think Emmanuel McNeil-Warren is the perfect guy for that. At 20 for the Cowboys, we're going to go with Ruben Bain's counterpart, Akeem Mesidor. We had the Cowboys take Monsieur Delane at 12. I actually had them take Delane and Mesidor in my last mock as well. So exact same first round for the Cowboys here for me. Like I said last week, Mesidor, the age is an issue. He's 25 years old. He will be 26 at the end of next season. And at the time of when he would be getting extended from his rookie contract, he would be 29 years old. That is the only reason he's not like a top 15 pick realistically, is that age concern. But I think the Cowboys need edge rushers so badly that I don't think that's going to deter them from taking him down here at 20. I think that's the reason that they wouldn't take him at 12. But here at 20, I think you have to push the age aside and just take a bona fide edge rusher that can come in and contribute right away. Keldrick Falk is another guy considered here. Edge rusher from Auburn. Looks the part. Great length, 6'6", 285. He's a guy that, if you just merged his length with Ruben Bain's production, he'd be, the first overall pick, honestly. But that's not how this works, obviously. Falk didn't have quite necessarily a lack of production. Wasn't quite what you would hope for coming into the season, coming off of his 2024 season. So I went with Mesidor here at 20. At 21, we went to the Steelers here. I have Caden Proctor again. I could see Caden Proctor going a lot higher than this. I would be stunned, but I wouldn't be completely stunned if the Browns took him at number 6. I think if the Browns are going to take him, they would trade back out of number 6 to, maybe 12 or 14 or somewhere in the mid first round, not necessarily up at 6. I think that'd be a reach, but a somewhat plausible reach. So I have him at 21 for now. Well, not for now. This is my last mock draft of the season. But I would not be shocked if he went a lot higher than he did here. So moving on, number 22, I have the Chargers take Vega Ioane here. I've had Vega at 14 to the Ravens for months. I loved that fit, but now more recently, seeing how teams are treating Spencer Fano and what looks to be the path that Spencer Fano's career is going to go down on that interior, I think Fano's a better fit for the Ravens, and he projects to be, maybe a bit more solid further on later down the line. That is not to take away from Vega Ioane. He is a fantastic guard, fantastic player, and if he goes at 14 over Fano, I would not be surprised at all, like not even remotely. But here he falls down to number 22. Moving on, the Eagles at 23. This is where I have Keldrick Falk going. Like I said, looks the part. Absolutely love everything about his measurables. Super long arms, 6'6", 285. He's exactly like this is the type of player that the Eagles can turn into a Pro Bowler, an All Pro one day. I think he would do great in Philly. A loaded defense, a loaded defensive line, obviously help him a lot. So yeah, 23 Eagles take Keldrick Falk. 24 the Browns. I stuck with Omar Cooper here. I think these first two picks for the Browns are going to be tackle and wide receiver. It's just a matter of what order. Is it Carnell Tate at 6, and then Blake Miller or Ian Achor or any of these tackles. Caden Proctor, if he falls a little bit. Lomu, even I could talk myself into here. And number 24. But to me, I think they are better off going with Maui Noah at 6, and then Cooper, or even if Cooper's gone by now, Denzel Boston, Casey Concepcion are all great options here at 24 as well. So I went with Cooper. 25 is the Bears. This is where I have my first of that group of interior defensive linemen going. I have Caden McDonald here. Caden McDonald, you would love if he was able to play like every down. I think if he was an every down defensive lineman, he would go top 20 probably. But unfortunately, he's not. He's more. He can be, but I don't think he will be. He's a great run stuffer. I don't know how much pass rush you're going to get out of him here in the NFL. He didn't do much of it at Ohio State. He showed up when he needed to, but he's not a reliable pass rusher. He's much more of that zero, just be in the middle and just take up space and stuff the run. And I think if you're taking a defensive tackle top 20, he needs to be able to rush the passer as well. And I don't know exactly if that's Caden McDonald's role. But at 26, the Bills with Denzel Boston here, switch it up a little bit. The wide receiver. They did just trade for DJ Moore, but I still think they have to get Josh Allen some more help at receiver. Obviously, Diggs was there for a while, but outside of, that 4-year period, 4 years or so, that Stephon Diggs was there, Josh Allen hasn't really had many elite wide receivers. He's had guys like Khalil Shakir and Gabe Davis, players like that are good players, solid players, but he's not like a true number one. And who knows if Denzel Boston is really going to be a true number one, like prototypical wide receiver that, catches 1,300 yards per season. I don't know if he's that type of player, but I do know that he's a great red zone option. He's possession catch guy. You throw it up to him, he's gonna come down with the ball. There's no, he's not gonna drop the ball. He has never struggled with drops. That's just not who he is. He's a safe player. Pretty high floor. Who knows how high the ceiling is? High floor. I think just gives Josh Allen some stability. Opposite of DJ Moore. I really like this pick here at 26. At 27 now, this is going to start a run of Clemson players, much like the last mock draft did. That string of Clemson guys back to back to back to back. It's going to happen again. The first one here is Blake Miller to the 49ers. He's a right tackle, but you're going to lose Trent Williams probably in the near future, probably within 2 years or so, I would say. And so getting another good. The cornerstone tackle, I think, is pretty key for the 49ers, whether it be this year's draft or next year's draft. I went with Blake Miller here. He's not going to be left tackle in the league, I don't think. I think he'll be a right tackle. But I still think that this is a good fit here at 27. I think the Texans would have liked to see Blake Miller there. I had them taking Blake Miller in my last mock draft, actually. But here, the 49ers steal him at 27. 28, the Texans. I would like to go offensive line here, but I don't think there's any guards here at 28 that I love enough to be able to take. I think dream scenario, Vega Ioane slips all the way down here, or they trade up to go get Ioane, with the Chargers if he falls past the Ravens at 14. But that's just not the way the board fell. And so here I go interior defensive lineman with Peter Woods. Like I said last time, you would love to see a bit more production from him last year. Really, all these Clemson guys, you would have loved to see more. You expected more from them. Peter Woods, CJ Parker, Avian Terrell, all guys that coming into the season could have been top 10, top 15 picks. Woods and Parker especially were the top 10, top 5 picks. Didn't have the season you wanted. But they slipped down a little bit. I have Woods at 28. And then, like I said, with Parker, I have him at 29 to the Chiefs here. And then we're going to have Terrell at 30 to the Dolphins. Like I said, all back to back to back to back. Terrell, I already talked about last episode pretty extensively. Great man cover corner. I see a lot of AJ Terrell in him, his brother, over at the Falcons. Would have liked to see a bit more of the season. Not that he had a bad season by any means, but a little quiet, which is kind of to be expected on a team that disappointed so much, nearly as much as Clemson did. TJ Parker could have been a top 5 pick if he had the season people were expecting, but he didn't. He slips down here to 29 with the Chiefs. So the Chiefs pick up TJ Parker and Jordan Tyson in this first round. Moving on to 31, the Patriots. I have both these last 2 picks are the same as last time. I have Ian Achor at 31 to the Patriots, and then Colton Hood at 32 to the Seahawks. I am still pretty firm in my belief that I think Will Campbell should move to guard for the Patriots, and they should draft a tackle, whether that be Ian Achor or Caleb Lomu, or who knows if Caden Proctor were to fall as far. I doubt it, but he could. Blake Miller, Caleb Lomu, any of these guys, draft one of them, move Will Campbell to guard. I think that would be their best course of action. Obviously, the Patriots know better than me. I am not going to pretend to be an NFL coach or an NFL GM. But that's just my personal opinion. And the Seahawks at 32, I went Colton Hood. I'm not still considering because this is my last mock draft. But Brandon Cisse is a guy I really like. I really like Cisse. I think he's pretty underrated. I couldn't talk myself into taking him over Colton Hood, though, here at 32. But if, the Chiefs or the Dolphins were to take Hood at 29 or 30, I would not hesitate to have Cisse go here at 32. But the board didn't fall that way, so we went with Colton Hood here at 32 to wrap up the first round. So that is a wrap for this video. I will have the full second round coming up soon in just a couple of days on Thursday morning, the day of the draft. I am looking forward to that, and I will talk to you then. Thank you for watching, everybody. Like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what I can do better for the next video. I appreciate it so much. I'll talk to you on Thursday.